Hello, this is Joshua Shipp, and I'm here to talk to you about the sea star dissection. So since we're not able to go into the classroom to actually perform the dissection, I'm going to show you some nice pictures of sea star anatomy and kind of explain how their systems work so that you have a good idea of kind of what you would have seen if you had carried out the dissection. Now, the first thing to recognize about a sea star is that they are echinoderms, and because they are echinoderms, they have pentaradial symmetry. So basically, they have their body parts are multiplied 5 times around a central axis. There are 5 different ways you could slice them in half, and they would have the same structures on both sides of the slices. So they have a form of radial symmetry. Most of the other animals that you would look at around the world, including ourselves, have bilateral symmetry. So like this kitty over here on the right, the kitty has bilateral symmetry. There's only one plane that basically you could pass through a cat's body, kind of going midline down their body, through their head and through their back and so on, that would give exactly the same structures on both sides. So for a bilaterally symmetrical animal, you can talk about a front end and a back end, an anterior end where the head would be, and a posterior end where the tail would be. You also have the dorsal side, which would be, in the case of the cat, it's the cat's back facing upwards, and then the ventral side underneath where their belly would be. So that works for a bilaterally symmetrical animal, but because sea stars have pentaradial symmetry, we don't usually use those terms. There's not really a head end or a tail end or anything like that. So one way that we talk about the anatomy of a sea star is we divide up the sides in terms of the oral side, which is the side on the bottom, which would usually be downwards, and then the aboral side, which is the top of the sea star. So first I'm going to show you the oral side. So on the oral side, you would have spines, kind of sharp spines, mineralized spines that would pass through their skin, and that's for protection. And then the middle of each arm, would be 5 arms typically, middle of each arm would be tube feet. And the tube feet are used for locomotion as well as to, grabbing onto prey, like if they were going to pry a clam open. In the middle of the sea star would be the mouth of the sea star. And inside the mouth is actually a couple of stomachs. So in this picture here, you can see this one of the stomachs protruding out of the mouth. And the reason for that is because the way that a sea star feeds is they throw up their stomach, one of their stomachs, and then that stomach will release enzymes to liquefy their food and then bring the food back into the body of the sea star. And so I want to show you a little bit of what the tube feet look like in action. So here's a short video showing you tube feet moving along a surface. So a sea star would have hundreds, if not thousands, of tube feet. Each tube foot at the end would have a suction cup. And then the suction cup releases a chemical adhesive to bind to a surface. So the way that they walk is they extend each tube foot, anchor it with this chemical glue, pull a little bit, and then release. And so by all of these tube feet working together, it causes the sea star to move along a surface. So the tube feet, the mouth of the sea star, that would all be on the oral side. It's oral side because that's the side with the mouth. If you look at the aboral side of the sea star, on the aboral side, you would also have protective spines covering most of the surface, typically. So you'd have these sharp spines that would stick out. And then there's another major structure. So on the sea star, kind of between two of the arms, you'll see a little round, kind of light-colored structure called the madreporite, or the sieve plate. And this is a close-up view on the right here. You can see a magnified view of the madreporite. And this is the entrance to the water vascular system. It acts as a filter because the sea star doesn't want little rocks, little organisms floating around inside of its water vascular system, kind of gumming up the system. So the water vascular system has this filter to make sure that, purified ocean water would get into the water vascular system. So on the subject of the water vascular system, this is how a sea star would operate all of their tube feet, which are necessary for sensing their environment, for moving, as well as for feeding. So the water vascular system really is a series of fluid-filled canals and water pumps, and they use water pressure to power their tube feet. So on the left here, you can see a diagram of how water would pass through the body of the sea star in the water vascular system. So water would go into the madreporite, the filter, and then there is a short little fragile-looking tube called a stone canal, and that connects to a larger ring canal, a circular canal that is in the middle of the body of the sea star. And then the ring canal has offshoots. So then fluid would go down each arm through the radial canals. And then the radial canals, as they go along the arm, they have little connections, little divergences on both sides of the canal that would connect to these little water pumps. So if you look on both sides of the canal, you have these little bulbs that kind of look like little balloons. Those are the ampullae, the water pumps. And then when the ampullae squeeze, because they are basically a water pump, that forces water into the tube foot, causing the tube foot to extend. Okay, so they're using that pressure to extend the tube feet. So that's what operates this whole mechanism, is this water pressure inside of the water vascular system. So let's look at, how the water vascular system would appear in an actual sea star. Well, I showed you already how the madreporite would appear in the external anatomy. So on the right here, you can see, here's the madreporite. Right under the madreporite, you can see this fragile little tube that is the stone canal. So it's labeled there on the right. Just highlight it a little bit. So this little tube here would be the stone canal. And it actually is quite fragile, so commonly in dissections, it'll get torn and you won't be able to see it. But that would be the connection to the next part of the water vascular system, which is the ring canal. So in the middle of the sea star, and commonly you would have to remove the stomach to see this, but there is the ring canal here. Okay, so what you would actually see on the surface, though, and if you felt it, would be hard, kind of bone-like plates. So it feels very firm there. So there's these mineralized structures that kind of operate like bone. But inside of those plates would be the actual ring canal. The ring canal itself would be soft and vulnerable to damage, just like the stone canal. But it's protected by those bone-like plates. And it's the same way that in our bodies we have our bony vertebrae that protect our spinal cord. The spinal cord is soft nervous tissue that could easily be ripped or torn, but it's protected on the outside by these segmented bones that we call the vertebrae. In the same way, these mineralized plates inside of the body of the sea star, they protect their tubing of their water vascular system. So what you're actually seeing here on the surface is not actually the ring canal. You're seeing the protection of the ring canal. But if there was a pin there, on a test, or if it was pointing to that region, it would represent the ring canal, because that's where the ring canal would be of a sea star's body. You can also see here in this other picture a little bit further back in the middle here of the sea star would be the ring canal. So after the ring canal, then the water of the water vascular system extends down each arm by the radial canal. Okay, so the radial canal would extend down the middle of each arm. So you can see there's kind of this bony looking ridge that extends down the arm. Okay, so that ridge is called the ambulacral ridge. And just like we had with the ring canal, those bone-like plates, those mineralized plates, protect the radial canal inside of there. So inside of these hard surfaces would be a softer radial canal. Okay, and then after the radial canal, you can see on the right here, here's a close-up view of the radial canal kind of surrounded by those plates. On either side of the radial canal would be these soft little bubbles, okay, you can see here, and those are the ampullae, the water pumps. Okay, so they fill up with water that they get from the radial canal, and when they squeeze, that forces water into the tube feet. So each tube foot, which you'll see on the underside of the sea star, would be connected inside the body of the sea star to an ampulla. So when the ampulla squeezes, the tube foot extends. When the ampulla retracts, that causes the tube feet to retract as well. So we talked a lot about the water vascular system of the sea star, but there is some other anatomy that you should be aware of in the sea star's body. So inside of their body, in the central disk area, in the middle of the sea star, you will see there are two stomachs. They have a pyloric stomach and a cardiac stomach, one sitting on top of the other. On a dissected sea star, they're very difficult to tell apart, so you can kind of just think of that as a stomach. And it's a very kind of squishy, fibrous tissue that's kind of difficult to remove in a dissection. But the stomach would sit on top of the ring canal area, so you wouldn't actually be able to see the ring canal without first removing the stomach in the middle. Okay, if you dissect the arm of the sea star, so you can see here, eventually you'd get this ambulacral a ridge that would carry the radial canal in it. But the more obvious structures you would come across, there's kind of this greenish, gross-looking, large structures that occupy most of the arms, and those are the digestive glands. So each arm would have a couple of digestive glands, and this is part of the digestive system. So after food material goes to the stomach, it gets diverted into these digestive glands, and then enzymes would be released into the food to break it down more and then absorb the minerals. So this is part of their digestive system. Underneath the digestive glands, so in this picture on the right here, you can see the digestive glands have been removed. You'll see this other tissue that looks usually kind of pinkish and granular, and those are the gonads of the sea star, so they're reproductive structures. So that would be, where their eggs or their sperm would be produced. Sea stars are pretty difficult to tell if they're male or female just by looking at them. But what you could do is you could make a slide of the gonad tissue, and if the gonad tissue under a microscope, if it looked like really big cells, those would be egg cells, so it'd be a female. And if it looked like really small cells, those would be sperm cells, so that would be a male sea star. So that's one way you could identify the sex of the sea star. So sometimes the gonads occupy, most of the arm underneath the digestive glands. In other cases, they're quite tiny. So in this picture at the bottom here, you can see, just a couple of little tiny gonads hanging down from the base of the arm. And so they would be much smaller in this case than the digestive glands. But there would be two of them that would be anchored to the base of the arm. So two for each arm, just like you'd have two digestive glands above that in each arm. So in summary, these are the structures that you should be aware of as far as the next quiz and the final practical exam, which will be online. So for the external anatomy, be aware of the oral and aboral sides. So what that means. And then the madreporite or sieve plate, what that would look like, the tube feet, and then the mouth in the center of the sea star on the oral side. For internal anatomy, be aware of the components of the water vascular system. So we already covered the madreporite. The stone canal is sometimes difficult to see, so you don't have to identify that, but you should be able to identify where the ring canal would be, the radial canal, and the ampullae, and then the tube feet. So just kind of remember that the path that the water would take would go madreporite, stone canal, ring canal, radial canal, ampullae, and then into the tube feet. So that's the whole sequence of flow within the water vascular system. Then we covered a couple of structures in the digestive system, so the stomach and the digestive glands, which are in the arms. And the stomach would be in the middle of the sea star. And then the gonads, which are part of the reproductive system. So those are the structures you should focus on to be able to recognize as far as the quiz or the practical exam. So good luck in your studies.